Hi guys, welcome back to Sacred Vedic Astrology. My name is Samantha and I'm so blessed to be a professional Vedic astrologer. So today we have a very important topic that has been in the ethers for me lately with so many clients, and whenever I get some sort of thematic astrological transit or dasha sequence come up in my client sessions, I feel like it's kind of some sort of omen or sign that it's something that I should talk about or maybe share or, spread some knowledge about through my content. And this is going to be a dasha sequence that I know very well because I've lived it, I've been in it, I've been in my Rahu Dasha since I was 12 years old, and I know the energy of Rahu very well at this point. All right. And I get a lot of clients who happen to be in their Rahu Mahadashas. And I feel like the reason for that is because I'm living Rahu energy. So I know how to explain it to them and I know how to bring clarity into their, life through the Dasha explanation of what Rahu energy is really bringing about. I found so much peace and so much relief when I knew that I was in a Rahu Dasha and I had, a Vedic astrologer explain that to me. And I was like, good Lord, what's going on, And the truth is of a Rahu Dasha is right when you enter it. The second you start entering that Rahu Dasha, you're going to start feeling that Rahu energy very strongly. And of course, it depends on someone's personal natal chart. Where is Rahu sitting? What house? Is it activating Dharma? Is it activating Artha? Is it activating Moksha? It's going to be different depending on the different house energy that it is activating, as well as what planets conjunct Rahu or oppose Rahu, as well as, how Rahu dominant is someone by nature versus how Ketu dominant is someone. So there's all these different aspects to it. Of course, Vedic astrology is a deeply complex system of astrology, and it's hard to be a professional Vedic astrologer and make YouTube content or make, TikTok videos that can try to condense the essence of something in a way that's simplistic, which I find is kind of hard with content creation within Vedic astrology from an honest, viewpoint. But I'll try my best in this video to get to the essence and the root of a Rahu Mahadasha. And we can also take this into the Bhukti cycles as well too. So in Vedic astrology, we run the main dasha, which is going to be, Rahu, Venus, Jupiter, Sun, etc. based on your birth moon sign nakshatra is going to, tell us the whole sequence of the dasha system. That's how it's built upon, is your moon sign nakshatra placement determines how your dasha sequence unfolds. So it's going to be different for everyone, but if you're running a main Rahu Dasha or a Bhukti Rahu Dasha, which is going to be that second planet down, so we have the main cycle, then we have the second planetary energy, and then we have, it goes on, but the way that I was trained in Vedic astrology is I only use the main cycle and then the second Bhukti ruling planet for my personal practice. So, there's going to be one planetary energy, and then there's going to be the second one down. So if we're running a main Rahu Dasha as the main Mahadasha sequence or the second planetary energy, so the Bhukti ruling planet, we're also going to feel a lot of that Rahu energy as well too. All right, so this is going to be a deep dive analysis into the Rahu Dasha, what energy that brings into our life, how we're going to feel when we start a Rahu Dasha, and some things to look out for in a Rahu Dasha, because again, I've talked about this before, I've lived some of the most crazy astrological energy someone can live in their life from a young age. I went through a Rahu Dasha when I was 13. I went through Sati Sati very young. It's just been a lot astrologically, but the reason why I became a Vedic astrologer is because of all that crazy astrological energy. I was like, what is going on here? This ain't hitting for me, So I had to really unravel it astrologically and understand the Rahu Dasha, Sati Sati, all of that energy from a very young age, because it was just a lot energetically. And the positive of that is I have a lot of personal experience with these transits and I understand them very well at this point. So let us start off by saying that the Rahu Mahadasha or Bhukti ruling cycle, it's going to be a lot of ups and downs, highs and lows, topsy-turvy. Things are great, things are not great. It's a lot of ups and downs when we're talking about Rahu energy. All right. Rahu is this energy that is shadowy by nature. So it's not a planet, right? Rahu is the ecliptic of the moon. So Rahu is something that we're always trying to learn about and understand in this current evolution. Ketu is something we've kind of like understood and brought with us from previous lifetimes. If you believe in the idea of reincarnation, if you don't, that's okay. Just see it as something that's like innately within us. And Rahu is very much that physical plane of energy. It is this world, it is the materialistic world, it is the energy of deceit and trickery and illusions, because that is what the materialistic world is, right? It's kind of an illusion by nature. So when we enter Rahu Dasha, we get thrown at us all of these illusions, all of these deceptions, all of these things that we're kind of sifting through of like, is this actually what I want? Is this real? Is this something that's, deceitful in some manner? Is this something that is illusionary? And the Rahu Dasha brings constant lessons around this, right? So if someone's running a Rahu Dasha, especially if it's like in their first 7th house axis, they're going to meet people that are very Rahu-like. So people that are successful, of the world. Maybe they are very financially secure. And then time goes on and we find out that there's something sort of deceptive or deceitful about that person. That's the energy of Rahu. All right. We can, learn under like a guru or a guide or a teacher. And again, I've lived the Rahu Dasha. So this happened to me many times, and it turns out that that guide or that guru or that teacher that we're learning under is deceitful, or there's some sort of illusionary aspect to it, because that is the energy of Rahu. It's unraveling the illusions that come to us presented as something that is great on the materialistic realm. All right, so when we're running a Rahu Dasha, we have to watch out for the people we're meeting, people that are making these grandiose promises. Anything that feels too grandiose, we have to watch out for in a Rahu Dasha, because that is the energy of Rahu innately. It's larger than life, it's grandiose, it's extreme, it's, that materialistic realm of desire. So when we go into a Rahu Dasha, we start getting this, activation of Rahu-like people, Rahu-like scenarios, Rahu-like jobs. We can even have jobs where they seem great and then we go into them and it's not quite what it seems to be. It's the energy of Rahu. We can, learn under like a guide or a teacher, and trust me, when I started my business many years back, I used to have a lot of like guides, gurus, teachers, of course, because you have to, in astrology, if you're doing a more metaphysical based career, I would have Reiki teachers and, all sorts of different teachers, and finally to a place recently where I actually found really amazing teachers, guides, gurus, etc. But it took a lot of that like deceptive, illusionary energy to actually get there and to actually find people that were really positive teachers and guides. So it took a lot of going through like deceptive, illusionary people, guides or teachers that had this like weird mask on, is how we can see Rahu, right? Something is not quite what it is actually appearing to be. That is the energy of Rahu. It's like this mask of illusion, essentially. We can start to see through a lot of illusions and veils during a Rahu Dasha, because that's the energy of Rahu, right? It's not something that is actually real in itself. It's something that we're constantly obsessive towards. It can be kind of compulsive with Rahu. And then we go towards it and it's like, wait, nothing's even actually there. That's how Rahu can feel when we're chasing a lot of those illusionary aspects of it. Now, what's very important to note about a Rahu Dasha is success is very likely during a Rahu Dasha, especially if Rahu is well placed. Let's say it's conjunct other personal planets like the sun, which would be going towards that confidence, that sense of self, business, leadership, etc. Let's say Rahu is with Mercury, going towards some sort of like writing endeavor, teaching. All of those things can go really well on the materialistic plane because that is the energy of Rahu. And a lot of celebrities will get heightened success in a Rahu Dasha because Rahu is that materialistic plane. So if there's some sort of desire for success, a Rahu Dasha can actually be a great time to get there and to achieve a lot of our materialistic desires. We can have some sort of growth in business, some sort of growth on the material world. We can gain a lot of financial blessings, a lot of financial security because Rahu is that successful materialistic energy. But on the path to get there, best believe there's going to be a lot of illusions that we have to sift through to get to that place. Rahu is also the energy of what we're learning about, so it's not comfortable, right? Rahu is that energy of karma. So when you are in a Rahu Dasha, you are attracting a lot of these karmic experiences over and over and over again until you learn the lesson, right? That's the energy of Rahu. And it's very interesting because I found in my Rahu Dasha, when it began, there was this energy of immediately, right away, obsessions and addictions start to come about as well too, because that's the shadow side of Rahu, right? So if we think about like the light, darker aspects, which is there in anything in life, but if we're thinking about the sort of lighter aspects of Rahu, it would be success, materialistic success, financial security, heightened, anything that's materialistic but actually brings us, security in this lifetime would be the positive manifestation of Rahu. It would also be learning our karmic lessons and going towards the new evolution, which is this current lifetime and what we're trying to learn in this lifetime, which is our karma, right? We're here to learn those new lessons, which is Rahu, right? Ketu is the past. It's what we've already mastered. Rahu is something that is uncomfortable. It's foreign. It's different in some regard than what we already know. So if we go towards Rahu, we can learn a lot of our karmic lessons and try to clear them in a Rahu Dasha. But it does attract a lot of those karmic experiences. All these things that are trying to push us and propel us into growth is a lot of that Rahu energy. Rahu is also the future. Ketu is the past. So when we go into a Rahu Dasha, it's actually a very psychic time where we can have a lot of premonitions. We can understand things that are going to happen. We can understand trends that are going to come about. We can understand the future more clearly if we don't get lost in delusions on the way, right? Because again, Rahu is always that delusional, confusing energy. So, for me, when I started entering a Rahu Dasha, I feel like a lot of my psychic stuff started coming online where I was like, wait a second. Why do my dreams happen the next day? A lot of that like psychic energy started coming online because Rahu is the future. But on the path to like that psychic development and trying to see into the future, because Rahu is the future, there can be a sense as well too of like delusions about the future in a Rahu Dasha as well. Now, what's very interesting about Rahu energy is there can be a sense of feeling like we're, going towards this like endless cycle of trying to get to something. And we don't always feel like we get there, right? Like it's this feeling of obsession towards trying to find fulfillment in something. So for example, if we're running a Rahu Dasha and we have like Rahu in the 10th house, someone is so obsessed with their career success at that time that they can feel like it's never enough. Like they're trying to get there and they're getting these awards and rewards and recognition, but it can feel like it's never enough, right? That's Rahu. It's this obsessive, addictive energy that we're constantly trying to go towards in this lifetime. If Rahu is in the second house, we can feel like we're constantly trying to make more and more money, right? It's like this obsessive quality towards it, and it can feel like it's a never-ending cycle, right? So it's really important in Rahu Dasha time periods to have spiritual grounding rituals in some way. And one of my favorite Vedic astrologers was talking about this when she was, discussing the Rahu Dasha. And she was saying how it's really, really important when Rahu energy is around to kind of stick to these like spiritual routines or rituals in some regard, because things can get so clouded and delusional and illusionary that if we don't ground back into our spirituality, it can get really wild. It can get really out there during a Rahu Dasha, right? It can be like, oh my God, I need this and I need this and I feel like I need this. That's the energy of Rahu. It's a lot of this obsessive, addictive energy. A feeling of constant need and constant longing and constantly I need more and I need more and I need more. That's a lot of that Rahu energy. If someone is prone to addictions, the Rahu Dasha is going to heighten those addictions and bring it to the forefront. So I've seen this in my personal life where I actually got sober during a Rahu Dasha, but many clients, many people I know, friends, etc., when they go into a Rahu Dasha, they start having like this addiction towards something. And the thing about addiction in itself is I think we have this perception of addiction, being only to substances or only to drinking or only to something that is a more obvious addiction. But addiction actually manifests in so many various ways. So you can be addicted to a person, you can be addicted to a relationship, you can be codependent, and that is an addiction in itself, right? And I saw that a lot in my Rahu Dasha constantly, where I was like, oh, this is going to be the thing that's going to make me feel better, right? So the thing about addiction and like codependency is it's coming from a place of not feeling like fulfilled or whole in yourself, right? So it's like constantly trying to fill this void over and over again and never getting to that place where you're actually fulfilled is what addiction actually is, because you feel like something is incomplete within yourself. So in a Rahu Dasha, addictions come out, and they come out very strongly. People can escape into drugs, into alcohol, into sexual addiction, sexual compulsions, into relationship addiction, into financial addiction, feeling like, oh, once I get, this amount of money, I'm going to be whole, I'm going to be complete, right? So that's the energy of Rahu. It's this very addictive quality to it. So whenever I have clients who are in a Rahu Dasha, I'm like, watch out for your consumption of anything that makes you feel better in the moment, but actually is hindering your growth in the long run, right? Because again, Rahu always has that shadowy, deceptive, illusionary energy to it. And what is more deceptive and illusionary than drugs and alcohol and addictions, right? It makes you feel like you're constantly getting to a place where like this time it's going to be better, this time I'm going to feel better, this time it's going to be different. It's not real, it's an illusion, right? So we have to constantly come back to that place in a Rahu Dasha, whether it's the main Dasha or the Bhukti cycle of like, is this real or is this some sort of illusion? It's very important. It's very, very important, guys. And, it's probably, here's the thing about like karma in itself is we're going to go through our karma no matter what. Like we have these karmic experiences, karmic lessons that we're here to go through, but in a Rahu Dasha, it's going to speed up the process of those karmic experience where it's like, oh, I'm meeting this past life person. There you are again, right? I can't even tell you guys how many people in a Rahu Dasha I met that immediately I was like, I've known you from a past life. Like it would happen over and over again. Because it's Rahu, it's the energy of karma, it's the energy of clearing that karma and trying to work through it. And so when we meet relationships or meet partners in like a Rahu Dasha, first of all, we have to watch out for that element of deceit 100%. We can meet partners that are like, addictive or obsessive in some regard as well too. But also there can be something that is not real about the sort of facade that they have during a Rahu Dasha. Okay, but it can be very karmic by nature. And we can feel those obsessive, addictive qualities towards people as well in a Rahu Dasha. Best believe it. So the energy of Rahu, you have to constantly come back to this, like, I don't want to say mantra because that's a little bit not quite the right word to say, but coming back to the thought, like holding the thought, and I tell this to all my clients who are running a Rahu Dasha, hold this thought of, is this real or is this an illusion that I'm making up in my mind? That is Rahu Dasha. That is it. If I could give one piece of advice for anyone running a Rahu Dasha, hold that thought and constantly come back to it of, is this real or is this an illusion? It's going to help you so much when you're in a Rahu Dasha, okay? I just had a client a couple days ago, and she was in the Bhukti cycle of Rahu, and it's in her 5th house of the mind and the mental energy. And she came to me and she was like, I can't stop thinking all of these like negative thoughts, but nothing was wrong in her life, right? Nothing was going wrong. It's because Rahu is there. It is creating this energy of deceit or trickery or illusion in some aspect, in some regard. So Rahu energy can feel like that. It can be like nothing's actually wrong, but for some reason I'm feeling this, I'm experiencing this, I'm feeling this. It's obsessive, it's addictive. It's not based in reality. That is Rahu. All right, so it's important to come back to that grounded place of like, is this real? Is this a valid thought that I'm having, or is this some sort of illusionary thought? When you're meeting people in a Rahu Dasha, is this person really who they say they are, or is there something illusionary within it? Right? When we're going throughout our career, is this a job that actually is going to serve me, or is there something illusionary about it? That's the energy that Rahu is going to bring over and over again and teach us over and over again until we learn the lesson. That is Rahu Dasha. And again, we can have a lot of that materialistic, worldly success, a lot of that fulfillment on the material world, but we have to find those spiritual grounding practices. So, a little bit of a personal story of what happened to me when I started going through a Rahu Dasha, which again was when I was very young. I was like 13 years old and I started activating the Rahu Dasha. So I go into a Rahu Dasha and I'm meeting people pretty young. Like I would say, I really started feeling this energy maybe around like the age of like 16, 17, where everyone around me was very much into anything that was deceptive or illusionary, anything that was about escaping, if you guys get the gist of what I'm talking about. And I would constantly meet people that were all about, oh, this is how you feel better, this is how you escape. There was a lot of escapism and addictions, and I was surrounded by people where there was all these like illusions energetically, right? And I would find myself in places where it would be very Rahu-like, right? I'd be like in these mansions in Hollywood, when I was younger, partying a lot, whatever. I would find myself like in these mansions in Hollywood and, oh my God, these people seem so blah, blah, blah. Everything seems so this way, And everything was all very deceptive and illusionary by nature because there was an undertone to it that was not real. Right? So meeting people where they seem great and they seem successful, but there's something not quite right beneath the surface, right? Or I would be going throughout my life and meet people where they seem great and, oh my God, this person's so amazing. And then things start unraveling and it's like, wait a second, something's not quite right here, right? I would have guides, teachers, gurus, where they would like become obsessed with me and they would love me. And then all of a sudden it would be like, wait a second, this person is supposed to be like my teacher. Why are the, weird Rahu stuff was going on all the time when I entered a Rahu Dasha, where it was constant illusions and deceptions and people with a lot of addictions, and my own addictions came out. And it was all Rahu, guys. It was all Rahu. And the thing is if someone explains this to you when you're in a Rahu Dasha, it clicks for you and you start to understand what's going on energetically. It's like, oh, that is why it's like that, right? And you have to come back to that grounding place of like, is this real, or is this something that is built on a faulty foundation and full of illusions? Okay? And the positive of going through a Rahu Dasha is when you get to the end of it, which I'm still in it for a couple more years. But you get to a place where you see through a lot of the illusions. Okay? And you develop a lot of your psychic intuition, because the Rahu energy is the future, and it's something that you have to go through to get to a place of discernment. So hopefully by the end of a Rahu Dasha, the positive is you develop a lot of discernment about what is real, what is illusionary, who is real, who is illusionary, and what is actually going to bring you true fulfillment outside of the illusion aspect of things and people in life, right? So as I'm coming to the end of my Rahu Dasha, it's interesting. I feel like I can see through illusions and veils like so easily. I can just like look at someone and be like, something ain't right. I know what that person's up to, right? You come to the end of the Rahu Dasha and a lot of that discernment gets developed because you have gone through all of the illusions, all of the deceptions, all the illusionary people, and you get to a place where you're like, I've seen that before. And I know where this is headed, right? Rahu is the future. You start to understand like how to read energy and how to read people and situations from a more clear standpoint, as opposed to getting lost in delusions. That is Rahu. Now, the other really important aspect of a Rahu Dasha is it is going to push you into a place where you have to start learning to balance your Rahu Ketu energy in your chart, right? So wherever Rahu sits, wherever Ketu sits, themes are going to be coming up between those two houses because it's the nature of that dasha, right? If you're going through like a Rahu 5th house dasha, then we can also have themes of the Ketu 11th house come in, where it's like friends, it's groups, it's organizations, right? Those two things are getting balanced. Also, it's very important to note if you have a Kala Sarpa Yoga, the Rahu Dasha main and Bhukti ruling cycle, either Rahu or Ketu, is going to be more intense for someone. When they start hitting those Rahu periods, if you have the Kala Sarpa Yoga, you can go to highs, you can go to lows, you can go to highs, you can go to lows, and it's more extreme with Kala Sarpa. All right. Think about the Rahu Dasha like this. It is unraveling your karma, it's learning your lessons, it's seeing through the veil of illusions, it's attracting a lot of illusions constantly. It's attracting this feeling of obsession towards different things, different people, different substances, different this, different that. We're addicted to this. And then, I'm not addicted to that anymore. And then it's something else comes in, right? It's constantly trying to clear through addictions, obsessions, illusions, all of it. And it really will get you to a place where you are learning your karmic lessons quick. It's happening quickly because it just keeps coming in. If you don't learn it the first time, Rahu's like, hi, I'm going to send you another lesson the second time, right? It's like that. It's really like that with Rahu energy. The positive is if you use that energy to build something on the materialistic world, a lot of success, guys, can come into you during a Rahu Dasha, okay? People win Oscars in a Rahu Dasha. People get nominated for Grammys in a Rahu Dasha. Why? Because it's so success producing, because Rahu is that materialistic realm of desires, right? So if you have some sort of business, some sort of creative passion in a Rahu Dasha, if you put a lot of your energy towards it, heightened success can come, and it can come quickly. Because Rahu is quick. It's up, it's down, it's there, and then it's gone, and it's there, and it's quick. It's like that, right? It's very up and down. So also another thing that can happen in a Rahu Dasha, you can reach heightened places of success, and then you can also get to really low places as well too. It's high, it's low, it's up and down, it's confusing, it's illusionary. But the power of Jyotisha is that we are putting light onto things that we don't understand until we understand it. Okay? I'm telling you guys, anytime I have a client who is running a Rahu Dasha and I start explaining Rahu energy, they're like, oh my God, thank God I'm not crazy. That's literally verbatim what they say. They're like, thank God there's a reason for it. And I'm like, I know. Trust me, I know. When I was in my Rahu Dasha, I thought I was crazy. I was like, what is this? You know, it's like that with Rahu. It's a lot. It is a lot of energy to unravel because it's karma. It is, you know, this new evolution that we're trying to get to and we're trying to learn about it, but it's not always easy to get there. A Vedic astrologer who you guys might know, Ernst Wilhelm, would always talk about people would sometimes rather die than go to their Rahu placement, which is dramatic, yes, but it can feel that way. It can feel like we don't want to go there, right? Because it's not innately in us. Ketu is something that's very innate. It's very natural. Rahu is something that is where the growth is and where the lessons are, but we don't want to necessarily go there, right? So in a Rahu Dasha, we can really try to avoid our karma. We can try to avoid going towards that house, okay? For example, for me, my Rahu is in my 4th house, and when I was going through a Rahu Dasha, I was moving all the time. I was constantly moving, and I was like never around, this is so funny, but I was never around where I grew up. Like I was never around my home because it was my 4th house, and I was trying to avoid it. Like I'm not even, it's that specific and that literal with Vedic astrology, but Rahu's in my 4th house. I was always trying to avoid home life, family. I was always with friends, you know, dating people. I was never home. Like that's Rahu in the 4th house, right? I was avoiding that Rahu energy. I was moving. I was, you know, going to different places. It was very Rahu in the 4th house. And then, because Rahu is like, don't forget, you got to learn those lessons. I actually moved back to where I was from, which if you guys don't know, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, which no one is. But I came back to my home and I actually had to like clear all this karma and like heal all this stuff within like family and my past. And it was so interesting because it's like my whole Rahu Dasha, I was avoiding my 4th house. I was avoiding it. I was doing what Ernst Wilhelm said. I'm like, I'd rather do every single thing except that 4th house energy. I was trying to do everything to avoid it, right? And then Rahu comes in and it's like, remember those lessons that you need to work through around the 4th house themes, okay? And then I kind of got forced into going back to that 4th house energy. It's very specific and it's very pinpointed like that in astrology. And because Rahu is up and it's down, it's confusing, it's extreme. I was always like moving. I would have weird situations where I'd like have to move out of nowhere, out of the blue. Rahu in the 4th house. Very, very pinpointed where it was all about that 4th house energy. Okay. And then Ketu opposes my 10th house. So I got forced into a spiritual career because my Rahu 4th house, Ketu 10th house axis is getting lit up in a Rahu Dasha, right? So I didn't want to be an astrologer initially, which is a story for another time. But as I was going throughout my life, I was like, I'm an artist, you know, I'm an artist. I was trying so hard to be a photographer for so long, and I was really involved in art. And then a series of events kind of forced me into the path that I'm on now, which is funny, you know, it's that Rahu energy. It's forcing you into something. It's some sort of karmic experience. And because Rahu's in my 4th, Ketu's in my 10th, it was all about that. It was all about like, you know, moving all the time, leaving the home, blah, blah, blah. Ketu's in the 10th. I am trying to work a film, photography, television, which is Ketu. And then I get forced into a spiritual moksha career. So do you see how specific it is when we understand the energy of Rahu and Ketu and also the houses that it is activating? That was my whole entire life experience during a Rahu Dasha. That was it. That was all it, right? So it's that specific. All right. And best believe that the day I entered the Rahu Dasha, like this, like magic, like clockwork, I started feeling Rahu energy. I was like, oh my God, what is this? You know? There's deceptions, there's illusions, there's karma, there's lessons, there's psychic premonitions. That's also Rahu. A lot of psychic energy. And it was a lot to hold, right? Like, it's a lot to hold, especially if you run a Rahu Dasha when you are younger. All right? So, the blessing of a Rahu Dasha is that materialistic success, is building something on the materialistic realm, but not becoming overly lost or overly attached to the material world, because again, it's an illusion, right? It is an illusion by nature to think that once we get something, we're going to be fulfilled. Once we get this amount of money, we're going to be fulfilled. Once we get this car, we're going to be fulfilled. Once we drink this, I'm going to feel better. That is Rahu. It's constantly trying to fill this sort of void and fill things up with addictions and substances and clothes and cars and money and the next this and the next best thing, right? And you'll learn over and over again in a Rahu Dasha why that doesn't actually bring you fulfillment and why it's very important to actually go towards a balance of Rahu and Ketu, which Ketu is the spiritual world, it's moksha, it's the other world, okay? So a lot of times in a Rahu Dasha, especially as we're getting closer to the end of it, what I've seen in my own life and with a lot of clients is, as we're nearing the end of a Rahu Dasha and we're about to enter our Jupiter Dasha, we realize the importance of spirituality, all right? So it's kind of like this experience we go through where we have to go into the depths of materialistic desires and addictions and obsessions and longing and wanting this and wanting this. And again, I'm telling you guys, like, my Rahu Dasha was like that for so many years. So many years of it when I was younger was about addictions and obsessions and materialistic desires, and I lost a lot of my spirituality for a long time in my Rahu Dasha, right? Because I was always very spiritual when I was younger, and then I hit a Rahu Dasha and I was like, well, I want this and I want that. It was very like that. So by the end of it, then you come back to a place where you're like, wait a second. It's weird, it's cyclical, but you get to a place where you come to the end of going through this experience of wanting all the materialistic desires, and you want the people that are successful, and you want to be around the rich, successful, blah, 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 whatever. You want to be around the drugs and the alcohol and the fancy whatever, you know. And then you get to the end of it and you're like, wait a second. I need to get back to my spirituality, right? That's the thing that makes me happy. So by the end of a Rahu Dasha, and as we're nearing the end of the Rahu Dasha, so many people get very in touch with their spiritual side of themselves that was always there, but they lost a little bit in the Rahu Dasha. Okay? Because it's a Rahu Dasha, it is opposing Ketu, so Ketu is there, it's lingering. Ketu's like, wait, don't forget about me. You know, don't forget about the fact that you love to meditate. Don't forget about the fact that you love astrology. You know, don't forget about that Ketu energy in a Rahu Dasha, because we can get so swept up into the energy of Rahu. All right. So that is my personal analysis of a Rahu Dasha or Bhukti cycle. You're going to feel it more strongly if you're running like the actual Rahu Mahadasha, because you're going to be going through it for a long, long time, okay? The Rahu Dasha is long. It is a long one, all right? And you will learn so much about your karma. You will learn about the materialistic realm of existence. And then more often than not, you get to the end of it and you're like, none of that even matters. None of it even matters, right? Because you chase it and you get it and you realize this isn't the true happiness. But isn't that kind of beautiful? Because that is what life is itself. Is we chase these illusions, we chase these feelings, we chase these ideas of success and this and that and the other. And the truth is, and this is why moksha is moksha, because it's the end of life, it's that spirituality, it's that liberation. When we get to the end of our life, the only thing that really matters is our happiness and our spiritual belief and our connection to the divine, essentially. You know, if you're in a Rahu Dasha and you have no connection to God or the universe or gods or whatever you believe in, you are going to get swept up in a lot of delusions. You are going to get swept up in a lot of stuff that isn't going to bring true fulfillment. All right? Because when we have a true connection to God, source, gods, whatever you see it as, things don't really like shake us that much, right? We're not so swept up into things because we know that the true energy we answer to is that like godly divine place. So when someone comes in and they're offering us this and that, and oh my God, this person's so this and they're so successful, we can come back to our spirituality and be like, but why do we need all of that? Why, this person isn't bringing that to me. I'm getting that true happiness and fulfillment from that divine place. All right? And that's what you learn by the end and as you're ending a Rahu Dasha. All right? And for me personally, it was, it started very Rahu. It started very Rahuvian. It was a lot of substances, it was a lot of escaping, it was a lot of craziness and partying and meeting all these people that were successful, and it was a lot of that for me in the start of my Rahu Dasha. By the end of it, I'm going to the meditation centers. I am becoming a Vedic astrologer, right? I'm studying Vedic astrology every day for 10 hours. That's how my Rahu Dasha starts evolving from the beginning of it to the end of it. And the truth is, the true happiness for me always comes from those more divine spiritual places. And that's something that I learned through the Rahu Dasha. And again, I'm still running it. We're not in Jupiter yet. We're getting there, but I feel so lucky and so blessed to have gotten to a place in my Rahu Dasha where like I truly understand the power and the importance of spirituality and true connection to source and God and the divine, but also a true sense of connection to yourself outside of illusions and distractions and addictions. Okay? Because who are you outside of the illusions? Who are you outside of the addictions? Who are you outside of the things that make you look good to the outside world? But what's actually going on in your soul? Like that is the end of a Rahu Dasha, right? Right? Because if all of those materialistic things were to get swept away, would you still be proud of the person that you are beneath all of that, right? Can someone meet you and be impressed by your energy, by your intentions, by your morals, by your principles, by the way you actually show up in the world? That is understanding how to actually get out of the illusions of Rahu. Okay? Because what does it matter if you have the nicest car, the most expensive belt? What does that matter, right? If your soul is full of addictions and unhealed wounds and all, it's not going to matter. And that is what you learn by the end of a Rahu Dasha. All right. Rahu energy is trickery, it's deceit, it's illusions, it's deceptions, it's the materialistic world, it's power, it's ego, it's confidence. So we're going to learn about all those things. We're going to develop all of those things. And we can also develop our sense of confidence and ego and self-worth, but we can also have a lot of experiences in a Rahu Dasha where that gets just knocked right down, knocked right on down. because we can get to a place where we're very high in our ego in a Rahu Dasha, and then it's very low, and that's very high, it's very low. It's like that constantly. So think about Rahu energy as up, and it's down, and it's high, and it's low. And if you can really maintain your sense of who you really are outside of illusions, outside of success, outside of nice cars, outside of this and outside of that, then you can really grow and develop yourself in a way that is healthy during a Rahu Dasha, because there is nothing negative about ego in itself. We all have ego. It's always going to be there. If we live in this materialistic world in a body, we're going to have ego. Don't trust anyone who says they've had an ego death. They did ayahuasca and they have no ego. Like, what? That doesn't mean anything, because we live in this materialistic world. Everyone has an ego, but we learn to develop it in a way that's more healthy as well in a Rahu Dasha. Because we'll go to those highs in our ego and our confidence, and then go just as low as well too. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this analysis of the Rahu Dasha sequence. It is one that you're going to see a lot of information about online. It's going to talk about success and worldly desires and money and fame. And is that possible and plausible during a Rahu Dasha? Yes, a lot of celebrities reach heightened success during their Rahu Dasha main cycle or Bhukti cycle. But the truth is, you're also going to attract a lot of deceptions, a lot of illusions, a lot of addictions, a lot of obsessions, a lot of crazy thoughts. And it's like, where is this coming from? It's coming from Rahu. I just told a client yesterday, I was like, every time you get those weird, deceptive, illusionary thoughts, be like, Rahu, go away. I see you. Go, get out of here. You know, get out of here, Rahu. It's like that. It's a lot of these weird, illusionary thoughts. All right. All right, so I do feel like it's in my purpose to help clients and anyone who's a student of Jyotisha understand the Rahu Dasha, because Lord knows, I went through it and up and down it. I remember, this is something that Ernst Wilhelm said as well too, and it really feels like this, especially in the beginning of your Rahu Dasha, or you're in the midst of a Rahu Dasha. He was like, all you have to do in your Rahu Dasha is not die. And it's one of my favorite things that I've heard from a Vedic astrologer, because I was like, that is it. If you survive a Rahu Dasha, you're chilling after that. You're good. Nothing really gets to you. You're like, oh, I've already almost died 1,000,000 times in my Rahu Dasha. It is what it is, you know. No, but not to scare you guys. And I don't actually mean it in a literal sense, but so much gets thrown at you in a Rahu Dasha that it's like, oh God. It's wild, but we learn the most through those intense, tumultuous time periods as well too. And I do feel pretty unshakable as I'm nearing the end of my Rahu Dasha. I'm just like, that doesn't mean anything. Been there, done that, whatever. So it's like that. It's really like that. All right, I'm just sending all the love. Let me know if you guys are running a Rahu Dasha and how you guys have been feeling, what you've been experiencing. Vedic astrology is very empowering in the sense that we can start to understand cycles and energy and work with it and work through it and, empower ourselves through it. Because if someone told me about a Rahu Dasha when I was younger, it would have all made sense. It would have all made so much sense. And it gives you a lot more of this clear pathway of how to work with energy when it is happening for you. All right. Sending all the love. We'll talk soon, guys.